So, schönen guten Abend allen. Wie geht's euch? Gut? Müde? Allen willen zur Grill? Kein Closing Keynote, rather Grill? Ja, ganz gut. Okay, ich gehe Englisch sprechen. It's a lot easier for me. I speak a couple of words of German because I live in Belgium. You know, we have several languages in Belgium. I live in Antwerp, so but that's the Flemish part. Flemish is a sort of variant of Dutch, by the way. If you ever speak Dutch, it's a different way of speaking. Anyhow, cool. So my name is, like Jean-Pierre tried to say, the official pronunciation. And I like to say it like that because I know in all these languages, I was in Poland recently, tried to speak a Polish name. That's almost impossible, so that's why I try to give something impossible back. So try to speak my name properly. It's Gunther Verheyen. Good luck practicing that. So thank you, GP, and the ScrumDay people and Scrum events for having me here. Like GP said, for the past 3 years, I've been working at Scrum.org. Although Scrum.org is based in Boston, Massachusetts, US, sort of the other side of the water. And I'm living in Antwerp in Belgium, so we're sort of a distant team. Still worked out very well. But there's a lot of Scrum happening in Europe, certainly in sort of the Netherlands. So I'm in Belgium, but I worked a lot in the Netherlands, where Scrum is sort of all over the place. And proof of that is the people of EduScrum that are here. Scrum in the educational system. There's a second initiative. Last week in Netherlands, I wrote a foreword for a little Scrum guide that people wrote for Scrum in the construction industry, building houses, real estate, management, housing projects, and so on. It's fascinating. So it seems that our society is flooded with problems that Scrum seems to have an answer for, independent of anyway. But my focus is a lot with software. It's where I sort of raised up. It's the world I know it so well, so that's cool. And I'd like to talk with you about what I call the future present of Scrum. Does that resonate with you guys in a way? That title, Future Present of Scrum, is this, what does it say to you? Anybody? A strange title. I thought very hard and very long. I have to come up with a title that people think is strange. Cool. So it's the future present of Scrum. It's got future in it. It's got present in it. It's just a small reminder that everything we do in Scrum is always about the future. We can look back at the past, but the past shouldn't block us in what we do with the future. Daily Scrum is about the future. Sprint planning is looking to the future. Even Sprint Review is looking at the future, identifying what's the most valuable work that we should be doing next. Sprint Retrospective, certainly. So everything we do in Scrum is about the future. And I think it's a good moment in time to talk about the future of Scrum, because do you know how old Scrum actually is? Anybody? Yeah, so Scrum is turning 21. It's a bit older, certainly a lot of the ideas, but Scrum was sort of the first time officially presented to the public in 1995. So Scrum turned 20 last year, and it's turning 21 now. So I think that's a great point in time to quickly look back and try to look at the future again. So that's why the future present of Scrum. Can you imagine yourself, think back when you were 21? How did the world look like for you? A lot of drinking? Yeah. It's Germany, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So how did the world look like for you? So imagine Scrum is, in a way, already turning 21, and in a way, just turning 21. So how was that possible? I always use this also to say, people, maybe Scrum is no longer a hype. It's 20 years old. In technology, fast-moving, fast-changing world, oh, that's quite long. I don't know where Scrum is in its life cycle. But for me, it's certainly not sort of old, retiring, whatever type of framework. It's vibrant, it's vivid, it's all over the place. Have a look at Amazon, whatever. Look up books on Scrum, and then not the sports, but software development, management, whatever. There's a ton of books over Scrum. So pretty amazing. So 20 years, 21 years of Scrum. I think an amazing thing. So a big thanks to Jeff somewhere in the audience, I believe, and Ken for sort of composing the framework, and then keep promoting the framework until like after that first 10 years of Scrum, around 2005, things started changing. sort of agile software development, sort of in terms of Jeffrey Moore, came out of the chasm. It was sort of growing. So thanks for them for promoting the ideas, the principles, and sometimes sort of rigorously promoting it. But certainly thank you to all people actually using Scrum. That's the reason why Scrum is so successful, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there, teams, departments, organizations, using that simple thing called Scrum to solve really difficult problems. And it seems to be really helping, otherwise Scrum wouldn't have turned 21. So big thanks to you guys for actually using Scrum and making sure that Scrum survived its teenage years. So we're beyond those teenage years. Imagine, think back on your own past. How proud were you when you were finally allowed to actually drink officially, not illegally? So that's sort of happening with Scrum. Scrum is now sort of growing up. Let's help maturing Scrum. So really, really cool. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying they're doing Scrum. Sort of depending on the research, this is the version 1 survey. Has anybody seen the version 1 survey recently? State of Agile? Yeah, it's fairly recent. They say that like 68% of all Agile teams in the world say that they do Scrum. That's pretty amazing. Just a little side remark. I wish so much that those two figures were sort of the other way around, that more people were doing Scrum combined with extreme programming than just sort of Scrum. But anyhow, so about 70% of all people worldwide say they do Agile, saying, hey, we're Agile through Scrum. And there's other surveys. I recently saw some figures by Forrester, where Forrester said, this is really conservative. It's 90%. So sort of depending on the source, 70 to 90% of all Agile teams in the world say that they do Scrum. Or at least something that might look like Scrum. Yeah, you recognize that, right? Okay, cool. So, Scrum, 21 years old. A lot of people out there saying that they're doing Scrum. Does it mean we're done with Scrum? Are we done with Scrum? What do you guys think?
When did the Scrum and hardware thing get started?
So, do you think we're done with Scrum?
No.
No.
Looking at the state Scrum and hardware is at,
Oh, yeah.
we're really just, I don't see us beyond our teenage years.
Oh, it's still starting. In embedded software, combination with hardware, real products. Oh, cool. So we're not done with Scrum. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there are so many other opportunities to use the elements of Scrum. The idea of getting people to work together, to work for an aim, to get something to show after a short amount of time.
Yeah, true. Oh, we're not done with Scrum. So Scrum, that sort of simple engine, can be a really simple engine for a lot of improvement in a lot of domains of society. And even when those 70, 80, 90% of Agile software development teams say they're doing Scrum, even there I think we're not really done with Scrum. So let's make it a little bit more tangible. Can you take like 1-2 minutes? I'll give you time. Everything we do is time box. Sorry for that. Take a couple of minutes, 1-2 minutes, and think about what is your number one challenge in your organization, your team, your product, your project, whatever, moving forward with Scrum. What is bothering you the most? What is the biggest challenge, something you need to tackle moving forward with Scrum? You can do that on your own, or you can talk to other people. Imagine. Yeah? Take 1-2 minutes and think about what is your number one challenge moving forward with Scrum. Go. Wow, it's always amazing when that just works. It saves my voice to start with, but it's great. So that sort of hidden signal that we have in the Agile world, raising your hand means the end of a time box, in a way, shut up. So that's cool. So some challenges. What are your challenges moving forward with Scrum? Anybody? So embedding Scrum in the organization and getting managers and whatever to think in an Agile way and get more out of Scrum in that way, embedding Scrum better. Yeah, more challenges?
No, that's it.
That's it? That's everybody's challenge? Okay, so we can now conclude that in German there's one challenge. Once we've tackled that, we're done with Scrum. Cool, that's maybe like oh, let's plan out that work and make it so. Let's make a Gantt chart for the complete of Germany, and then next year we'll be fully agile. So, if you think about your challenges, additional question. So, what is stopping you? If you know what your challenges are, what is stopping you? Are you looking at other people, or are you trying to do the most that you actually can do for yourself? And if you can't do it yourself or with your teams, whatever, does your Scrum Master know? Or you sort of get going, Scrum Master, help us tackle those challenges. Are you actually including your management in tackling those challenges? Just a question, think. Or just sit still, complain about all the things that are not working, or maybe look for things that might actually be working. So just an idea on challenges with Scrum. So, but let's conclude that we're not really done with Scrum, certainly because there's at least in Germany one more challenge that we need to tackle. So what ScrumDay tries to achieve is improving the profession of software delivery. There's a slight change of words recently, it seems, that was decided upon. So increasing professionalism, professional software development. There's at least over there a lot of challenges. Scrum in the software world. Now, let's make it a little more tangible. Some challenges, at least I see. A lot of challenges around Scrum. Let me first start by saying, hey, it's all about people. It starts and ends with people. So using Scrum to humanize the workplace, and in that way create a more effective, efficient, productive, whatever workplace, that's really great. It's so often overlooked. Last week I was in Denmark, so I've been traveling a lot. I did a workshop at a big Danish bank called Nordea. I don't know if anybody knows it. It's the number 2 bank in Denmark, but it seems to be the biggest bank in the Nordics because they're also in Norway and Sweden and so on. And they have embarked on a gigantic agile development project. 400 people for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. It's for me too big to comprehend anyhow. And I did a fascinating workshop, 3 hours, very intense with top management and their, whatever they call it, chief agile coach, really great guy. And it also included Don Reinertson, if anybody knows in the book Flow. Great guy, so we talked a lot about metrics and measuring stuff, really great. And they wanted to know more because in the past I've been involved with some big companies in the Netherlands, ING, Philips, whatever, big things. And they wanted to know how did they handle things. So I gave them the example of that big bank in the Netherlands, some observations I could share with them. So they once upon a time started with Scrum. And then suddenly it had to be DevOps. And then it had to be safe. And now the most recent evolution is it had to be the Spotify model. So very fascinating evolutions over a period of about 5 years. Now they've enormously improved, but it's a big organization, so a bit of safe over there, a bit of Spotify over there, a bit of Scrum over there. I feel very comfortable because in the end, whatever they call it, whatever name they give it, essentially they're still trying to do Scrum. And trying to do Scrum properly. So I feel okay, but whatever they want to call it, it's good. But you know what? The fascinating thing, so after 5 years, I think by the end of last year, I saw a sort of video on YouTube by one of the guys I know at ING. And he suddenly sort of realized in YouTube videos, so that's sort of, it's there forever, right? Suddenly, damn, we're now discovering that it's all about people. And I'm very sure, I know the guy, great guy, he knew that 5 years ago. So what made them sort of get into that old process type of thinking and renaming stuff? And that's sort of my advice for Nordea. What if you wouldn't discover that it's about people after 5 years? What if you would start by accepting that it's all about people? That's really, really important and using Scrum for that. So, but anyhow, there's more challenges at Scrum Talks, what they call professional Scrum. You can just follow the ceremonies of Scrum. Oh yeah, we do Scrum, we got the daily stand-up in place. Okay. Maybe there's more to Scrum than just that. But even then, you follow the ceremonies, you organize, you do things called sprints, whatever. Then there's some additional stuff to that. What if you would sort of do Scrum, employ Scrum, understanding some principles and values? The values, 4 values of the Agile Manifesto, certainly the 12 principles, might give you a different perspective on Scrum. The Scrum Values. By the way, in July there will be a new version of the Scrum Guide. One of the biggest, can I call it an improvement, is the addition of the Scrum Values. Who's happy over having the Scrum Values being part of the official Scrum Guide? All right, cool. So thank you, Jeff, for that. So it's really good. So understanding Scrum from the underlying principles, maybe empiricism is one of the principles of Scrum, is foundation. The regular constant process of inspection and adaptation instead of all the predictive stuff. So that really helps. But what certainly will help in what we call professional Scrum is room for technical excellence. Great development practices in place, great engineering practices in place. That will help you build better software in every sprint after sprint after sprint. It's really important. It's what Uncle Bob calls the world that Scrum forgot, right? Or that Scrum overlooked. It's not completely wrong in that way. Although I always say that if you really employ the empiricism of Scrum, inspection adaptation, and you're using Scrum for product development, and you don't have product development standards and practices in place, you're not doing Scrum. How can you inspect and adapt if you don't have clear standards and agreements in place? So in a way, not having room for technical excellence in Scrum is maybe not really Scrum, but still. So the ability to create done increments, releasable software sprint after sprint after sprint, so the challenge. Product ownership. So what we see happening a lot in the Netherlands, and I think it's growing in Germany too, so I always consider the Netherlands as sort of ahead of the pack a little bit, to be honest with you, regards to Scrum. I don't know why. Maybe their problems were so huge that they suddenly realized they had to do something fundamentally different. Maybe that's the reason. But at least I see a growing attraction of product ownership. People going to product owner classes. It's a lot like sort of the old days of Scrum where people, my company wants to go for Scrum. I'm supposed to be the Scrum Master. Never heard about it, never read Scrum Guide, but I'm here, I'm in a class. That's sort of the same we see happening now with people from the business department, product management people. Oh, I've been appointed the product owner. Never heard about the thing, but here I am in a class. And now it's good. We can teach them about Scrum. Product ownership, certainly a challenge with, future challenge with Scrum. Scaling. Who's involved in trying to employ Scrum at some sort of bigger scale? Okay. Cool. So we see at least a lot of people struggling with it because they're scaling a version of Scrum that is still hiding a lot of dysfunctions and problems. And once you start scaling that way of doing Scrum, you're just scaling your dysfunctions to a level that you can't control anymore. So maybe you want to maximize Scrum first. Maybe you want to get the most out of Scrum, even a couple of Scrum teams before you start adding teams and people and complexity, communication paths and so on. So you want to maximize Scrum, and then you want to make sure that if you scale to a higher level of Scrum development, that you want to scale the effectiveness of Scrum and not just the dysfunctions of Scrum. Just an idea, suggestion. And then embedding Scrum in the enterprise. Maybe some ideas, Scrum Studio might help. And then upstream adoption, what I call sort of management, embracing Scrum, seeing the value of Scrum, accepting Scrum, stepping away from predictive management, and hopefully maybe your managers turning into your real Agile coaches, the believers of Agile and promoting Agile and the values and the principles, really embracing it. So, oh my God. So you thought you only had one challenge? I see, at least in the other countries, I see a lot more challenges. So, oh my God, where to start? What should I do first? So, what if you would just start with Scrum? And here's one statement I once created. What if you would try to use Scrum to create actually done increments in a sprint, no later than a sprint? Can be sooner, by the way, but certainly no later. That seems to be a huge challenge for a lot of people and companies and teams. So let's quickly go back to basics, just to sort of build on that statement a little bit. So there's a system called Scrum, product development system, whatever, also being used in a lot of other domains now. It thrives on one input, called product backlog. It's the input to your system. System then pulls in that work from product backlog with the goal to create an output, which we call valuable or done releasable increment. Very important because that's what your users will see, hopefully. Yeah? We're going to use that also to feed back information to the input of the system, compare, do lots of stuff. So Scrum, an Agile way of working, is full of feedback loops, right? So just the fact that by the end of every sprint we've got an increment that we can inspect and adapt, we're going to also inspect and adapt sort of the process, the way we apply it, that's being fed back. Inside of the system we've got this daily Scrum type of inspection adaptation. I hope you have great engineering standards in place because they give you additional feedback loops. It's all about quick and regular feedback. So that's sort of Scrum, feeding product backlog into the system, and what you get out of the system is a done valuable increment. That's fairly easy with one team, right? Yeah, one product backlog, one product owner, team pulls in work from the sprint into the sprint, and by the end of every sprint, you're producing a done increment. Very important, that done increment, because that's what your users will see. It becomes a bit more complicated, it seems, when you have multiple teams involved. And that's when people start struggling. So sort of going back to basics and then growing, scaling, please stick with the basics. So the basics are still, you've got one product backlog, capturing all of the work you think you need to do for the product at some point in time. It's going into the Scrum teams, being pulled by the Scrum teams, with the goal of producing a releasable increment by the end of every sprint. If you're doing that with multiple teams, it's still one output. I've been visiting quite some teams where they have like, oh yeah, we've got a product backlog per team, and then every team creates an increment in their branch of the code. That's fine, because it's up to the integration and release people to pull it back together and then so on. That's maybe not really the goal of Scrum. The goal of Scrum is to give you sort of business agility by allowing you to create increments of product that you can bring to your users so you close the feedback loop with your customers and your users. Very valuable information. So that's where the agility of Scrum comes from. So what if you would go for that? Yeah. So another question, take 1-2 minutes with sort of the informal teams that you formed and think about those questions. In your last project or last product, whatever you were involved with, the last team you were working on, did you deliver an increment by the end of a sprint? Did you deliver an increment by the end of every sprint? And additional question, was your increment actually releasable? Could you put it out there in production on the market with your users? And were you able to do that every sprint? Can you quickly talk to each other? Imagine in an event and you would have to talk to each other. Very strange, right? So take 1-2 minutes. What happened in your latest project? So, from everybody doing Scrum, who could say yes to the question, yes, we're producing an increment, it was releasable, and we do that every sprint? Oh, so maybe we're not done yet with Scrum. I've sort of been doing this question for several events now and for a long time. That's sort of the result, sort of estimation. At most 10% of all people actually saying that they're using Scrum are using Scrum to produce releasable increments. Although I think that's the core purpose of Scrum because it's the basis of agility, it's the basis of inspection adaptation. So again, nasty questions. What is stopping you? What is holding you back? What is holding you back from taking action, doing something about it? Are you sort of kicking your Scrum Master to get them to work?
This one challenge.
Yeah. So, and you thought you were out of impediments, right? So we do this retrospective. We don't know what to talk about. We've been doing Scrum for a long time. There's no more improvements. What about, some challenges might be called impediments. And you want to get your Scrum Masters, your management to work for you. So that's maybe there's something that needs to be done. Who has a definition of done in place? Because that's where it starts, obviously. So not everybody that does Scrum has a definition. Who has a definition of done in place? Cool, that's a great place to start. Because at least the definition of done should give you an insight into the actual state of your software or your product by the end of a sprint. Even if that's not releasable, because if you don't know, you can't do anything about it. At least core purpose of definition of done is give transparency of the state of the increment by the end of the sprint. So hopefully you can evolve your definition of done towards a state where it's actually reflecting this is releasable. Yeah? So there's a sort of, yes, you do in Scrum if you have a definition of done in place. Cool. And you know what? You will get a lot more benefits out of Scrum if your definition of done is not only just the fact that it's coded, but also tested, hopefully integrated, and maybe at some point you will cross the line where it's actually releasable. I hope you keep striving for that situation because that's That's where Scrum will be most helpful for you, your organizations, your profit, probably even your survival of your company. So really, really important. So, thinking about the definition of done. We've got this very strange question in one of our assessments. So I've been working with 150 brilliant professional Scrum trainers across the globe. Really great. So at one time, a year ago, we saw that a lot of the problems we saw, the sort of what we call low-scoring questions in our assessment and exams, all had to do with done, understanding done, the importance of done. I even had some people saying, yeah, you know what, done, that's not important because it's not an artifact, it's not part of Scrum. Well, first of all, I think it's an artifact, done increment. How much more important can it be? So we had this question in one of our assessments. Who creates the definition of done? Can you take 1 minute? And what would be the right answer to this question? Just talk with each other about it. Who creates the definition of done? If Scrum says you need to have a definition of done. So instead of giving you the answer, that would be too easy, right? I'll do the same with what we did with that community and other people, because in our community we've got these sort of Scrum Guide freaks. You know these people that know the Scrum Guide by heart? They can sort of say every word, every line of it, and it's very important to use the right exact types of words and so on. I call them Scrum. Yeah, well, Scrum Guide freak. Yeah, okay, cool. Invent words for them anyhow, I showed those people, oh, cool that you are sort of, we had very heated debates over the answer to this question, so I just showed them the quote from the Scrum Guide. So I'm going to give you like half an hour to digest this. There's obviously a reason why it's formulated like that in the Scrum Guide. There's reasons to everything. It's sort of what the title says. A professional organization defines quality. If product development and products, and let's say software products, if they are so critical to your organization, and I don't know any type of organization these days for whom software is not critical for survival sometimes, if that is so crucial for your organization, I would hope that your organization has an ID, guidelines, directions, ideas over the qualities that your software products should exhibit and show to the world. I think that's very important. So if you don't have those guidelines in place, you might wonder about it and then hopefully count on the professionalism of a development team to make up those guidelines, at least for their product. But I would hope that your organization has a definition of done in place or an idea of qualities you want to see reflected in the products that you're building. That's sort of part of embracing Scrum as your product development framework, right? Not just the IT delivery process. I think maybe we're not done yet. I don't know. So a quick question. If you look at, let's say, these are two products, right? Which of those two products would have had the best definition of done, do you think? Who thinks it's this one? Who says, yeah, this clearly has the best definition of done? Few hands. The other ones just don't have the money to afford that car. Okay. Who says, no, best definition of done? The other one. Oh, more hands. You see? Just part of your budgetary thinking. Oh. The other ones not raising their hands. What? Oh. Yeah, I would certainly hope that they probably would have had very distinct definition of done. And I hope that the definitions of done of these two products would reflect the distinct product qualities that their companies would want their products to exhibit. Probably take into account very different audience that you're aiming at, very different properties that you want to have, very different costing, cost price, and so on. So I think those organizations define what qualities their products should have because they thrive on products. Why don't we do that in software product development then? It's a bit of a question. So, and then next question, what are you defining as done? So you've got a definition of done. What is part of your definition of done? So what I see with most teams and companies I visit, they have definitions of done that hold things like that. Do you recognize this? Who has definitions of done in place saying, yeah, it must be tested, it must be hopefully coded. It's pretty essential in software development. Yeah, integrated. Who recognizes the definition of done like this? Anybody? Yeah, okay, cool. That's hopefully a good start. But you know what? It's, in a way, it's more like development standards. It's how you want to build code. It's not a definition of quality in itself. You might take this to a very extreme point where, okay, testing is part of a definition of done. So if our increment has been tested, it's done, right? Regardless of the number of defects that we've found, because we said it's tested, right? Oh, so maybe it's not really. So I would hope that over time, people would start evolving towards definitions of done that have product qualities, like it's software development, having a great clean code base. That's the quality of your product that you want to strive for. Only valuable functionality. All the functionality features, whatever that are not being used, removed out. Smaller footprints, smaller, easier to maintain, cheaper to maintain. So that's scary, right? As a product owner, making budget available to remove features and not just add features. If you think long term, might help. Product qualities, I would hope that you have design styles, guidelines. What is usability? What does your company, your organization call usability? Do you have guidelines? Do you help teams by living up to those guidelines? It's more like a sort of goal-oriented way of working. Not just how you build quality, but more like defining quality. And maybe you need some of both of them in your definitions of done. What if you would produce software that by the end of the sprint is proven to be worthy and able to be maintained, operated, living up to all service levels? So where's your DevOps problem then? If you produce software that by the end of the sprint can actually run in production, can be operated, maintained, reported on, and so on. So you see, definition of done, maybe there's more to it than just what we thought there is. So, thinking back, when will your increments be actually done? Seriously. Are they like coded and tested today? Is that already happening? When are you moving on? Soon? What are you waiting for? Maybe someday it will be like really measurable, valuable, monitorable, whatever. Only valuable features, functionality. So, in a way, what are you waiting for? This is, in a way, a sort of call to action. Maybe this will highlight, these questions might give you some things to talk about at your next sprint retrospective. What is holding us back from producing actually releasable software where we want to aim at the full spectrum? Producing software that can be operated, maintained, that is valuable, and that has no more work in it. By the end of every sprint, every 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever your sprint length is, no more than 4 weeks at least. So think about it, because done, despite what some people might say, it's pretty crucial in Scrum, because it's key for empirical product development. Because what are you inspecting? So in one of those blog notes I said, your velocity is 0 as long as you're not producing actually releasable software. You're just fooling yourself. You're calling something velocity, but you have no idea what it is because there's still a lot of work to be done. So what if you try to build actually releasable software? It will give you business agility. You can put software into the market every 2, 3 weeks, get feedback from your users, improve, change things. And it's also very important. It's about, it's all about people. This is pretty challenging for people, but it also creates a lot of energy for people in the teams. Oh, this is our goal, producing software that's releasable by the end of the sprint, so we can see that happy face with our stakeholders. We can see how users actually appreciate it or not appreciate it, act upon it. So it's in a way also about human fulfillment, and it's actually about joy, joyful product development. So there's a lot to say about them. So, call to action again. You can wait around, you can complain, that's fine. It's not going to help you build better software or more done software. One more last challenge before we can go and have some great barbecue. Maybe the idea of a Scrum Studio might help. What if you try to embed your software development, your product development done through Scrum in what we call a Scrum Studio? It might be a physical area, it might be a virtual area. At least within the Scrum Studio, within those boundaries, you actually do Scrum. It's no longer about capacity, it's not about utilization of people. It's about flow, it's about value, it's about measuring value, it's about reporting out maybe on value. It's about making sure that people have the tools, the infrastructure, that people can also develop themselves into great, technically excellent people, where they can achieve mastery and produce really great software by the end of every 2-3 weeks. Maybe it's an idea. Just think about it. So, are we done yet with Scrum? What do you think? Are we over? No more challenges? We've seen it, done, it's over, yeah? Let's go to the next slide. Cool. Great. It's my personal belief, at least, that Scrum will be around for a couple of years at least. And maybe the next 20 years will no longer be about just, we just started understanding Scrum. We're leaving behind those teenage years. Finally, we're getting it's so simple, Scrum. Still, there's a lot of possibilities, so we finally started understanding Scrum. What if you would use the next 20 years, 2 decades, to really start enacting Scrum? Living Scrum, applying Scrum, building releasable software, humanizing the workplaces that we're part of, really enacting Scrum. That's sort of my closure. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you have a great day tomorrow. I hope you have a great barbecue too. Thank you.